Joseph could stand it no longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, "Out, all of you!" So he was alone with his brothers when he told them who he was. Then he broke down and wept. He wept so loudly the Egyptians could hear him, and word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them. "Please come closer," he said to them. So they came closer, and he said again, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset, and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. This famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of his entire palace and the governor of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and tell him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me master over all the land of Egypt. So come down to me immediately. You can live in the region of Goshen, where you can be near me. I will take care of you there, for there are still 5 years of famine ahead of us. Otherwise you, your household, and all your animals will starve.' Then Joseph added, 'Look, you can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that I really am Joseph. Go tell my father of my honored position here in Egypt. Describe for him everything you have seen, and then bring my father here quickly.' Weeping with joy, he embraced Benjamin, and Benjamin did the same. Then Joseph kissed each of his brothers and wept over them, and after that they began talking freely with him. The news soon reached Pharaoh's palace. 'Joseph's brothers have arrived!' Pharaoh and his officials were all delighted to hear this. Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'Tell your brothers, this is what you must do. Load your pack animals and hurry back to the land of Canaan. Then get your father and all of your families and return here to me. I will give you the very best land in Egypt, and you will eat from the best that the land produces.' Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'Tell your brothers, take wagons from the land of Egypt to carry your little children and your wives, and bring your father here. Don't worry about your personal belongings, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours.' So the sons of Jacob did as they were told. Joseph provided them with wagons, as Pharaoh had commanded, and he gave them supplies for the journey. And he gave each of them new clothes. But to Benjamin he gave 5 changes of clothes and 300 pieces of silver. He also sent his father 10 male donkeys loaded with the finest products of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread. So Joseph sent his brothers off, and as they left he called after them, 'Don't quarrel about all this along the way.' And they left Egypt and returned to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. 'Joseph is still alive,' they told him, 'and he is governor of all the land of Egypt.' Jacob was stunned at the news. He couldn't believe it. But when they repeated to Jacob everything Joseph had told them, and when he saw the wagons Joseph had sent to carry him, their father's spirits revived. Then Jacob exclaimed, 'It must be true. My son Joseph is alive. I must go and see him before I die.'"
All right, you ready to dive into some serious family drama?
Always up for a good story, especially one with this much history behind it.
Exactly. And we're talking ancient history here, like scroll-worthy stuff. Genesis chapter 45, Joseph and his brothers, the ultimate tale of sibling rivalry.
Oh yeah, this isn't just your average childhood squabble. We're talking betrayal, years of separation, and a reunion that'll make your jaw drop.
No kidding. I mean, we're talking about a story most people have heard, but when you really dig into the emotional layers, the political maneuvering, it's mind-blowing.
Totally. And the thing is, we're dropped right into the action. Years have passed. Joseph's been through the ringer, sold into slavery by his own flesh and blood.
Can you even imagine? I mean, the guilt alone would eat me alive.
And the brothers are back home, grappling with what they've done, the consequences of their actions.
Talk about a tense family reunion waiting to happen.
You got that right. And here's the thing. Joseph, he's a powerful man now, second only to Pharaoh himself.
So he could have really given his brothers a taste of their own medicine.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He could have made them pay, publicly humiliated them, but he doesn't.
Interesting. So what does he do?
He summons them to his private quarters.
So it's a more like controlled confrontation.
Exactly. And what happens next is, well, it's one of the most powerful scenes in the entire Bible. He's surrounded by his servants. Imagine the scene. And he just breaks down.
He just starts crying.
Weeping uncontrollably. The text says you could hear it even outside the room.
Wow. Just the thought of it, all those years of pain finally bubbling over. I get chills just thinking about it.
It's raw emotion, pure and simple.
Yeah.
And you can bet his brothers are completely taken aback.
I mean, imagine seeing this powerful figure, this Egyptian authority breakdown like that. It must have been terrifying and confusing.
Absolutely. This is the guy who holds their fate in his hands, and he's completely lost it.
They still don't know it's him, though, right?
Not a clue. They're about to get the shock of their lives when he utters those three little words, I am Joseph.
Whoa, that's got to be like a punch to the gut. Talk about your awkward family reunions, right?
You think? It's more than awkward. It's a powder keg of emotions. Years of guilt, fear, probably even resentment, all coming to a head.
It's like the air gets sucked out of the room, time just stops.
And in that silence, you can almost hear their world crashing down around them. They betrayed him, sold him into slavery, and now, years later, here he is, holding their fate in their hands. It's a powerful illustration of how our choices, even those made long ago, can have unforeseen and often dramatic consequences.
I'd be sweating bullets, that's for sure. I mean, if someone did that to me, I'd be terrified of payback. It would be completely understandable if Joseph had decided to exact some revenge, to make them pay for what they did. But that's not what happens, is it?
Nope, not even close. And that's where we get into those deeper themes the text wants to explore. Instead of anger and retribution, we see forgiveness.
Forgiveness, seriously.
Seriously. Joseph reassures his brothers, tells them not to be afraid. He even goes so far as to frame their betrayal as, well, this is going to sound strange, but he frames it as part of a larger divine plan.
So he's not just saying, hey, it's cool, no worries. He's reframing their entire understanding of the past. He's saying that even their darkest actions were part of something bigger, something ultimately good.
You got it. And that's a powerful message. But let's not forget, Joseph is also a pragmatist. He's not just concerned with spiritual matters. He's got a family to protect, a famine to navigate.
Right. This is where things get really interesting. The point where personal drama intersects with political maneuvering. He's not just forgiving his brothers for his own peace of mind. He's ensuring the survival of his entire lineage. I mean, talk about thinking ahead.
Right. And he's doing it within the context of Egyptian politics, no less. We're talking about Pharaoh's invitation, the offer of land in Goshen. This is high-stakes diplomacy, with the fate of nations hanging in the balance.
And it all hinges on this incredibly charged family reunion. You've got to admit, the storytelling here is just brilliant.
It really is. But before we get swept away by the political intrigue, it's important to remember that at the heart of it all is a story about family, about the enduring power of forgiveness, and the unexpected ways in which our lives can intersect with forces larger than ourselves.
Okay, so we've got betrayal, reconciliation, and some serious political maneuvering all happening at once. And we haven't even gotten to Jacob's reaction yet. Buckle up, because things are about to get really interesting. So last time we were talking about Joseph, and we left off with him revealing himself to his brothers.
Yeah, big reveal, right?
Huge. I mean, talk about a plot twist.
And we talked about how Joseph was planning for the future, with the famine and bringing his whole family to Egypt.
Right, right. But what about dear old dad? What's his take on all this? I mean, imagine thinking your son's been gone for years, sold into slavery, and suddenly, bam. He's not only alive, but he's like the VIP of Egypt.
Talk about a shock to the system.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what must have been going through his head.
Well, the text tells us Jacob was stunned, speechless.
Understandable. I mean, who wouldn't be?
But then you get those sensory details that bring the story to life.
Yeah.
Like those moments where you need more than words.
You need proof.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you had these wagons loaded with provisions, gifts, all sent by Joseph.
Yeah.
It's like tangible evidence that he's not only alive, but thriving.
And he's like, hey, Dad, guess what? I'm not dead. And look at all this cool stuff I got.
Yeah. But think about it from Jacob's perspective. It's this wave of relief washing over him, making way for a glimmer of hope he thought was lost forever.
It's like a weight lifted off his shoulders. Years of mourning suddenly replaced with joy, relief. I don't even know what the right word
It's
is.
a powerful testament to the enduring strength of family, even when it's been stretched to its absolute breaking point.
It's like no matter how much you mess up, family's always there. But this reunion's not just a private family affair, is it?
You're right. It's happening on a much larger stage. Remember, Egypt is a powerful empire, and Jacob and his family, they're shepherds, herders. They have skills that are essential during a famine.
Ah, so you're saying there's a strategic element to this whole reunion?
Oh, absolutely. Pharaoh, facing this devastating famine, sees an opportunity. By bringing Jacob and his family to Goshen, it's not just offering them refuge, but also securing a reliable source of livestock agricultural expertise.
So it's a win-win. Joseph gets to save his family, and Pharaoh gets to bolster Egypt's resources during a crisis?
It's a strategic alliance, pure and simple. It really makes you appreciate Joseph's ability to think on his feet, to navigate these incredibly complex situations.
He's playing 3D chess while everyone else is struggling with checkers. But even with all the political maneuvering, all the strategic brilliance, there's this underlying tension that the text doesn't shy away from.
Right, like that whole "don't fight on the way to Egypt" pep talk Joseph gives his brothers.
It always felt a bit ominous to me, like, hey, I know we just had this tearful reunion, but let's try not to kill each other on the road trip, okay?
It's a subtle reminder that while forgiveness is powerful, it doesn't magically erase the past.
So you're saying those old wounds, that jealousy and resentment, they're still there, simmering beneath the surface.
Exactly. As happy as this reunion is, there's a sense of foreboding, too. Like, this is just the beginning of a whole new chapter with its own set of challenges.
It's like, congratulations, you've survived the first act of the play, but now we're really getting into the thick of it.
And that's what makes this story so relatable, so enduring. It doesn't offer easy answers or simplistic resolutions. It grapples with the messiness of family dynamics, the long shadows of the past, and the constant potential for conflict, even in the midst of newfound prosperity.
And let's be honest, who doesn't love a story with a little tension? Keeps you on the edge of your seat, wondering what's going to happen next.
For sure.
But before we get too caught up in the drama, there's another layer to this story that we haven't even touched on yet. Something that adds a whole new dimension to Joseph's journey. So we were talking about that underlying tension, and, it makes me think about something else.
Right.
It's how often Joseph points to, like, a higher power at work here.
Right. It's easy to miss that in the middle of all the family drama and political intrigue.
It's like he keeps saying, hey, it wasn't me. It was all part of a bigger plan.
Like he was just along for the ride.
Exactly. But a ride with a seriously important passenger.
Interesting. You thinking what I'm thinking?
Divine intervention. Fate.
Bingo. It's like that saying, God works in mysterious ways. Even when things seem hopeless, even when life throws a curveball, there might be something greater at play.
Yeah. And it's not just like a nice thought, It's key to understanding how people back then saw the world, right?
Absolutely. It wasn't some distant deity for them. God was intimately involved in their lives, guiding the course of history. So when Joseph's talking about God's plan, it hits different. It's not just him. It's how everyone saw things back then.
Right. It's like trying to understand a whole different culture, a whole different way of thinking. But that makes it even more fascinating, don't you think? Because it makes you wrestle with those big questions, like free will versus destiny.
Oh, now we're getting philosophical.
Well, it's true. I mean, how much control do we really have over our own lives? Did those brothers, by making that horrible choice, actually set in motion the very events that saved them?
It's a mind bender, for sure. On one hand, you've got human choices and actions, real consequences. But then there's this sense that it's all, woven into something larger that we can't fully grasp.
It's like looking at a tapestry, right? Up close, it's just threads, maybe a bit messy. But step back and boom, there's this intricate design.
And that, I think, is the beauty of this story. It doesn't try to give you all the answers. It presents these complex ideas, human choice, divine will, and lets you grapple with them.
Which is what makes you keep coming back to these stories, right? They stick with you.
Totally. And not just for the philosophical pondering. Joseph's story is also about resilience. It's about finding meaning even when life throws you the worst imaginable.
Talk about going through the ringer. But he comes out the other side, not bitter or vengeful, but forgiving.
It's a powerful message for us today, in a world that often feels defined by division and conflict.
It's a good reminder that forgiveness is possible, healing is possible. And even in the darkest of times, there's always hope for a brighter future.
Hope. I like that.
And on that note of hope, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the incredible journey of Joseph.
But that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. What are your takeaways? What resonated with you?
Yeah, keep those brain cells buzzing. How do you grapple with fate, free will, and faith in your own life? Head over to our social media pages. Let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.